Today we're going to be installing a cold air intake on this Cummins 6.7 Ram. This is a 3rd gen. I have here is an S&B cold air intake kit. So what you get is a tube that goes down to the turbo, the filter housing itself. The filter comes pre-oiled, and there is a lid that goes on top of the filter housing. Obviously it doesn't come put together, comes in a box, comes with all the hardware that you need, the clamps, clamp again for the filter, and for the tube end on the turbo side there is a rubber coupler with the clamps, and this is where your tube would hook up to from your valve cover for the ventilation. Obviously I've had the filter gutted, so it's going to be blocked off, so that's all set up ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started. First step in removing our factory air cleaner box from this truck, we'll have to disconnect the electricals. There's 2 sensors on here that we'll have to disconnect. We will actually be using this sensor and this sensor into our new cold air intake, so we will need these, but for now we're just going to disconnect them. So squeeze the connector, pull it back. Same thing on this one, squeeze and pull. So we've got those disconnected. We'll go ahead and pull that wire out of there. 10mm socket here to undo the complete box. From here we will undo these clamps. There's one clamp here, and we will have to undo the clamp at the turbo. You can use a flathead screwdriver for these clamps, or an 8mm socket will work just as well. You can remove this whole thing out of there as one piece, but it's just a little easier if you separate it. If you go ahead and undo the clips on the air box here, the air box lid, you can separate it here, have the lid off, and then you can work on the tube. Or you can take it all out as a one piece by undoing this 10mm nut here, and the clamp at the turbo. You can try to pull the whole thing out of there as one piece. That's up to you how you want to do it. It is a bit easier if you kind of separate it. So I have the lid off, and we can separate it here. This clamp is loose, and you can remove the lid off of the air box, exposing the filter. We will be needing these sensors out of here, and we can do that later. Let's go ahead and remove the whole complete assembly out of there first. Take the filter out of the box. Go ahead and undo this 10mm bolt here. That's what's holding the air box. The air box just actually pulls right off. What's holding it there is obviously that nut in the front, and in the back of it there's 2 rubber grommets. I'm missing one. Mine's broken off here, so I'm missing a piece here. And there should be 2 tabs at the bottom of the box itself, and those push into those grommets. Again, mine, one of them's broken on it, but that's what's supposed to be holding it. Box completely removed, gives you a little bit more room to work. The next step is going to be removing the hose directly off of the turbo. I have a long 8mm extension here. So we'll go ahead and loosen that up. Once you have it loose, you just pull up on it. And you should be able to remove the whole thing out of there, exposing the turbo. I'm going to be storing it in a box anyways, so I took it off as pieces. Now that we have everything out of the way here, this is a good time to check all your hoses and everything while you're here. You want to make sure your turbo hoses are all tight. Check all the connections, anything down here, make sure everything's okay. Silence ring on this turbo is intact. I'm not a big fan of removing those, just to get some more sound out of the turbo. But if that's something you're into, now would be a good time to do that. Install that rubber collar onto the hose that's going to go on the turbo. So we'll take this tube that came with the kit and the air box. We've got the clamps and the collar on the other end that goes to the turbo, and this other end will fit right into the air box itself. So let's go ahead and push that in there. Remove these sensors from the old air cleaner using a 7mm socket. Just loosen up all these bolts. There's 2 on this one, 1 here, And once you have those, these sensors just pull right out on both of them. And we're not going to be able to use these screws. Just have to transfer these sensors to our new intake using the new screws supplied with the kit. And install our sensors into our new intake now. What your kit comes with is these adapters. There's one here for this top sensor. So once you put that in, and there is a gasket that goes along with it also at the bottom here. As you can see, it's like a rubber piece. So once you fit that in there, your sensor will only go one way. That'll attach right in there. That should be this way, so the bolt holes match up. I'm gonna go ahead and attach that using the provided screws, and same thing for the other sensors. So now we have our sensors attached. The turbo hose, or the pipe that goes to the turbo, is attached. It just goes through a big grommet through the side of the filter box, and so it's free to move in any directions that you need to, so nothing gets tightened up on that end. So at this point we can go ahead and put the clamp on the filter, put it through the box, and go ahead and attach it to that this side of the pipe. We'll leave everything loose, that way we can adjust it once we put it in the truck. So with the filter just loose in the air box, I went ahead and dropped it in where it's supposed to fit, with the intake hose on it and the other end on the turbo. Put this 10mm bolt on in the front here for that nut to hold the box. So when you're dropping this in, you want to make sure the grommets, or the pins on the bottom of the box, drop into those grommets, and that's what holds the air box in. As you might remember, I am missing one of them. That's something we can fix later. That's part of the battery tray, so I will have to replace that eventually. And tighten up those clamps on the turbo, so that'll hold things in place. At this time we can go ahead and make our electrical connections. There's two sensors, if you remember. One here, and the other one ends up being right below it here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get those plugged in. So we have the filter in place and tightened up. Now we can go ahead and put this cover lid, the plexiglass lid, over the air box. I've got the seal on the edge of it. That comes not separate but part of the kit. You do have to install it on this glass. So once you got it in position, there's 4 Phillips head screws with these plastic washers that'll hold this lid down. So let's go ahead and put those in. Our installation is complete. Make sure you didn't miss anything. Make sure your electric connectors go back on both sensors. Clamp at the turbo is tightened up, and your crankcase ventilation, your hose from the valve cover is supposed to connect to that. Of course, mine is deleted, so mine is just plugged. So if you have that hose, that needs to go right back on this, coming out of the intake. Again, you want to make sure both of the clamps at the turbo are tight, your sensors are plugged in, everything's tight. Your 10mm nut in the front here holding the air box, make sure that's tight, and that's all it takes. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up. Doesn't sound any different than it's not supposed to at idle or anything. Nothing interferes with the hood when it's closed. So I was able to take this for a drive. Didn't really notice a big difference or anything. It does seem a little bit more responsive. One of the biggest things I noticed is you are able to hear the turbo now. You hear the turbo whistle. And that's mainly due to because we've deleted this canister out of the air hose, and that's what contains the foam silencer and everything. We'll have to do some more driving and see what difference it has made in the performance. So maybe I'll review that in a later video. But if you have any questions or comments, please do let me know. Thank you for watching.